June 28, 1914. A sunny Sunday morning in Sarajevo. The streets are decorated with flags. Crowds gather along the parade route, some cheering, others watching in tense silence. In just a few hours, a 19-year-old with tuberculosis and a loaded pistol will pull a trigger that kills 17 million people. But he doesn't know that yet. Neither does the Archduke riding in the open-top car. This is the story of the most consequential wrong turn in human history. Let's rewind. To understand how one bullet started the Great War, you need to understand the man in the crosshairs, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. He's 50 years old, heir to one of Europe's most powerful empires. He has a wife he loves deeply, Sophie, and 3 children waiting for him back home. He's not a monster. In fact, by the standards of European royalty, he's almost progressive. He wants to give more rights to the Slavic peoples within his empire. But here's the problem, not everyone wants reform. Some want revolution. Europe in 1914 is a powder keg. The continent is carved up between massive empires, each one armed to the teeth, bound by secret alliances, and paranoid about the others. Austria-Hungary controls a patchwork of ethnic groups, Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Croats, Serbs, many of whom dream of independence. In neighboring Serbia, a small but fiercely independent nation, nationalist groups see Austria-Hungary as an occupying force. One of these groups is called the Black Hand, a secret society of Serbian military officers who believe violence is the only path to freedom. And they're about to recruit a teenager. Meet Gavrilo Princip. 19 years old. Thin, sickly, rejected by the Serbian army because of his weak health. He's a student, a romantic, a believer in South Slavic unity. He reads poetry. He dreams of a free Slavic nation, united and independent. He also has tuberculosis, which means he probably doesn't have long to live. That makes him dangerous. Because when you have nothing to lose, you're willing to do anything. When Princip hears that Archduke Franz Ferdinand is planning a state visit to Sarajevo, on June 28, Serbia's national day of mourning, he sees it as an insult. A provocation. The Black Hand sees an opportunity. They give Princip and 5 other young men guns, grenades, and cyanide capsules. The plan is simple: line up along the Archduke's parade route. Wait for the car. Kill the heir to the empire. Then take the cyanide so you can't be interrogated. It should be simple. June 28 arrives. The weather is perfect. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie ride through Sarajevo in an open-top car, part of a 4-vehicle motorcade. The Archduke is wearing a sky-blue tunic covered in military decorations. Sophie sits beside him in a white dress and a large hat. They smile and wave. Along the route, hidden in the crowd, are 6 assassins. The first assassin loses his nerve. He does nothing. The second, a man named Kabranovic, throws a grenade. It bounces off the Archduke's car and explodes under the vehicle behind them, injuring several officers. Chaos erupts. The motorcade speeds away. Franz Ferdinand is furious but unharmed. The assassination attempt has failed. Gavrilo Princip, waiting further down the route, hears the explosion. He realizes the mission has failed. The other conspirators scatter. Princip walks to a nearby cafe, believing the opportunity is lost forever. He orders a sandwich. He has no idea that in less than an hour, the Archduke's driver will make a wrong turn. And Gavrilo Princip will become the most infamous teenager in history. After the grenade attack, Franz Ferdinand's motorcade speeds to Sarajevo's city hall. The Archduke is shaken but alive. His uniform is splattered with blood, not his own, but from the officers wounded in the explosion behind him. He's furious. When the mayor begins his prepared welcome speech, Franz Ferdinand interrupts him. "Mr. Mayor, I came here on a visit and I get bombs thrown at me. It is outrageous. But here's the thing about royalty, the show must go on. After a brief discussion, Franz Ferdinand makes a decision. He wants to visit the wounded officers in the hospital. It's the honorable thing to do. Sophie insists on coming with him. This decision will cost them both their lives. Now comes the critical moment, the planning of the route. General Oskar Podgorek, the governor of Bosnia, suggests they take a different path to the hospital. Avoid the narrow side streets where assassins might be hiding. Stay on the main avenue, the Appel Quay, along the river. It's a good plan. There's just one problem, nobody tells the drivers. The Archduke's driver, Leopold Lojka, has followed the original route all morning. He knows it by heart. When they set off again, he assumes he'll take the same path. No one gives him new instructions. No one double-checks. This communication failure will change the course of human history. The motorcade sets off. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie sit in the back seat of the third car. The Archduke's green-plumed hat sits beside him. Sophie's hand rests near his. They drive along the Appel Quay. So far, so good. But then they reach a critical intersection, the turn onto Franz Joseph Street. According to the original route, they should turn here. According to the new route, they should drive straight. The driver turns right onto Franz Joseph Street. Within seconds, Governor Podgorek, sitting in the front seat, realizes the mistake. He shouts, "Stop! You're going the wrong way. We're supposed to go straight along the quay." The driver hits the brakes. The car lurches to a stop. Right in front of Moritz Schiller's delicatessen. 5 feet away, eating a sandwich, sits Gavrilo Princip. Let that sink in for a moment. The most powerful man in the Austro-Hungarian Empire has just stopped his car, by pure chance, directly in front of the one assassin who didn't run away. Princip looks up. He can't believe what he's seeing. The car that was supposed to be long gone, surrounded by security, untouchable, is right there. Stationary. Within arm's reach. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie are clearly visible in the back seat. Princip stands. His hand moves to his coat pocket where the Browning pistol waits. Everything slows down. The driver is trying to reverse the car. The engine grinds. People in the crowd are starting to notice something is wrong. Princip steps off the curb. He raises the gun. Here's what makes this moment even more tragic. Princip almost doesn't shoot. He later says he hesitated because Sophie was in the way, and he didn't want to kill a woman. But he's committed now. The crowd is reacting. Someone is reaching for him. He fires twice. The first bullet hits Franz Ferdinand in the neck, severing his jugular vein. The second hits Sophie in the abdomen. For a few seconds, nobody realizes what's happened. The shots sound like firecrackers. Then Sophie slumps forward. Franz Ferdinand catches her. His last words are about her, "Sophie, Sophie, don't die. Stay alive for our children." But she's already gone. Gavrilo Princip tries to swallow his cyanide capsule, but it's old and only makes him vomit. He tries to turn the gun on himself, but the crowd is already on him, beating him, tearing at his clothes. The police drag him away. In less than 2 minutes, a teenager with tuberculosis has killed the heir to an empire and his wife. The car speeds toward the governor's residence, but it's too late. By the time they arrive, both Franz Ferdinand and Sophie are dead. Within hours, telegrams begin flying across Europe. Vienna receives the news with shock and rage. Belgrade braces for retaliation. Berlin calculates its next move. St. Petersburg mobilizes in support of its Slavic allies. London watches nervously. Paris prepares for the inevitable. What happens next isn't automatic, it's a month of choices, ultimatums, miscalculations, and pride. But the fuse has been lit. And nobody knows how to put it out. June 29, 1914. One day after the assassination. In Vienna, the Austro-Hungarian leadership gathers behind closed doors. They're not grieving, they're strategizing. Many of them never liked Franz Ferdinand anyway. He was too liberal, too willing to compromise with the Slavs. But his murder? That's useful. This is the excuse they've been waiting for. Emperor Franz Joseph, 84 years old and tired of ruling a fracturing empire, listens as his ministers make their case: Serbia must be punished. The Black Hand operated with Serbian knowledge, maybe even support. This isn't just about 2 deaths. It's about showing the world that Austria-Hungary is still a force to be reckoned with. But there's a problem. Serbia has a powerful friend, Russia. July 5, Austria sends an emissary to Berlin with a critical question: if we attack Serbia, and Russia intervenes, will Germany support us? Kaiser Wilhelm II doesn't hesitate. He gives Austria what history calls the blank check, unconditional support. Whatever Austria decides to do, Germany will back them up. It's a catastrophic promise. Wilhelm believes Russia won't actually fight. He thinks it's all bluff and bluster. He also believes that if war does come, it'll be quick, over by Christmas. He's wrong on both counts. With Germany's guarantee in hand, Austria-Hungary begins drafting an ultimatum designed to be rejected. July 23, nearly 4 weeks after the assassination, Austria finally delivers its ultimatum to Serbia. It contains 10 demands, each one more humiliating than the last. Serbia must suppress anti-Austrian propaganda. Arrest suspects. Allow Austrian officials to operate on Serbian soil to investigate the conspiracy. That last demand, letting Austria conduct police operations inside Serbia, is a direct violation of Serbian sovereignty. It's meant to be rejected. Austria wants war. But here's what surprises everyone: Serbia agrees to almost everything. 9 out of 10 demands. They only balk at allowing Austrian police on their soil. It's an incredibly conciliatory response. Most of Europe thinks it's enough to avoid war. Austria-Hungary declares war anyway. July 28, 1914. Exactly 1 month after the assassination. Now the dominoes start falling. Russia, the self-proclaimed protector of Slavic peoples, can't stand by while Austria crushes Serbia. Tsar Nicholas II faces immense pressure from his generals and his people. If he doesn't act, he looks weak. On July 30, Russia begins partial mobilization, calling up troops along the Austrian border. But here's where the plans start controlling the people instead of the other way around. Europe's militaries have spent decades creating intricate mobilization schedules, railroad timetables that must be followed precisely. Russia's plan doesn't allow for partial mobilization. It's all or nothing. Once the trains start moving, they can't stop. Nicholas orders full mobilization. Germany panics. They're caught between Russia to the east and France to the west. France and Russia are allies. If Germany waits for Russia to fully mobilize, they'll be crushed between 2 fronts. So Germany has a plan. It's called the Schlieffen Plan, and it's been sitting in a drawer for years, waiting for exactly this scenario. The plan is simple, brutal, and depends on speed: knock France out of the war in 6 weeks by invading through neutral Belgium, then turn all forces east to face Russia. There's just one problem: Britain has guaranteed Belgium's neutrality. Germany doesn't care. On August 1, they declare war on Russia. On August 3, they declare war on France and invade Belgium. The invasion of Belgium is Germany's fatal mistake. Britain had been debating whether to get involved. Many British politicians wanted to stay neutral. But when German troops cross into Belgium, a small, neutral country, public opinion shifts overnight. This isn't just about alliances anymore. It's about principle. About stopping aggression. British Foreign Secretary Sir Edward Grey stands at his office window as dusk falls on August 3. He watches the lamplighters moving through the streets of London and says to a friend, "The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime. On August 4, 1914, Britain declares war on Germany. In just 37 days, a regional crisis in the Balkans has become a continental war. Austria-Hungary versus Serbia. Russia versus Austria-Hungary. Germany versus Russia and France. Britain versus Germany. Eventually, the Ottoman Empire will join. Then Japan. Then Italy will switch sides. Then the United States. What started with 2 pistol shots in Sarajevo will become the deadliest conflict the world has ever seen. And in a prison cell in Austria, Gavrilo Princip watches as his 2 bullets tear the world apart. August 1914. Across Europe, crowds pour into the streets, not in horror, but in celebration. In Berlin, Vienna, Paris, London, and St. Petersburg, people cheer as war is declared. Young men rush to recruiting offices, afraid the war will end before they get their chance for glory. They think it'll be an adventure. A chance to prove their courage. They've been told it'll be over by Christmas. Everyone is wrong. The generals are planning for a war of movement, of cavalry charges and bayonet attacks, like the wars of the previous century. But this war will be different. Because technology has changed everything. Machine guns. Artillery. Barbed wire. Poison gas. The weapons of defense have outpaced the tactics of offense. And nobody realizes it yet. By November 1914, the German advance into France has stalled. The Schlieffen Plan, the strategy that was supposed to win the war in 6 weeks, has failed. Both sides dig trenches for temporary protection. But temporary becomes permanent. The trenches eventually stretch from the English Channel to the Swiss border, 475 miles of mud, barbed wire, and death. In some places, enemy trenches are only 50 yards apart. Neither side can advance. Neither side will retreat. Millions of men are trapped in a stalemate that will last 4 years. The war becomes a meat grinder. Generals order attacks, sending waves of men climbing out of trenches, across open ground, directly into machine gun fire. They call it, going over the top. It's suicide. At the Battle of the Somme in 1916, British forces suffer 60,000 casualties on the first day. The first day. By the end of that battle, over 1 million men are dead or wounded. The front line has moved 6 miles. This is what 2 pistol shots in Sarajevo have created, an industrialized slaughter on a scale humanity has never seen. The war introduces horrors the world has never imagined. Poison gas, first used by Germany at Ypres in 1915, turns battlefields into toxic nightmares. Chlorine, phosgene, mustard gas, chemicals that burn lungs, blister skin, blind eyes. Tanks appear for the first time, iron monsters that crawl across no man's land on mechanical treads. Airplanes, originally used for reconnaissance, become weapons. Pilots engage in aerial dogfights thousands of feet above the trenches. At sea, German U-boats hunt merchant ships, trying to starve Britain into submission. They sink passenger liners along with military vessels. The rules of warfare, the old codes of honor, are dissolving. Back home, the lists grow longer. Every day, telegrams arrive at doors across Europe. We regret to inform you. Entire generations of young men are being erased. In Britain, they call them the lost generation. Villages lose every man of fighting age. Women fill the jobs men left behind, working in factories, driving ambulances, manufacturing ammunition. The war is changing society in ways nobody anticipated. The old world is dying in the trenches. But nobody knows what will replace it. And what about Gavrilo Princip, the teenager whose bullet started it all? He's in prison. Because he was 19 at the time of the assassination, 27 days too young for the death penalty under Austrian law, he receives the maximum sentence, 20 years hard labor. He's sent to their Scienstadt fortress, locked in a damp, cold cell barely big enough to lie down in. His tuberculosis worsens. The disease spreads to his bones. His arm has to be amputated. He wastes away, a ghost of the young revolutionary who dreamed of liberation. By 1918, he weighs less than 90 pounds. Guards who see him report that he's confused, often delirious. Sometimes he asks about the war his actions triggered. When told about the millions dead, the empire's collapsing, the world burning, witnesses say he shows no remorse. Other accounts suggest he's horrified. We'll never know for certain. What we do know is that Gavrilo Princip doesn't live to see the end of the war he started. On April 28, 1918, 6 months before the armistice, he dies in his cell, alone. He's 23 years old. The world that died in Sarajevo. November 11, 1918. 11 a.m. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The guns fall silent. After 4 years, 3 months, and 10 days, the Great War is over. Soldiers climb out of their trenches and stand in no man's land, stunned by the quiet. Some cheer. Most just stare in exhausted disbelief. The war that was supposed to end by Christmas 1914 has finally ended, 1,568 days later. But the cost is almost incomprehensible. 17 million people are dead. 20 million more are wounded. Entire cities have been reduced to rubble. Farmland has been poisoned. Economies have collapsed. For empires that existed in 1914 no longer exist in 1918. The world that Gavrilo Princip was born into has been completely destroyed. June 28, 1919. Exactly 5 years after the assassination in Sarajevo. In the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, the victorious Allies gather to dictate peace terms to Germany. The treaty they produce isn't about reconciliation, it's about punishment. Germany must accept full blame for the war. Pay crushing reparations. Surrender territory. Limit its military to a skeleton force. The German delegation is given no voice in negotiations. When they're finally shown the terms, one delegate says it's not a peace treaty, it's a continuation of war by other means. He's right. The Treaty of Versailles doesn't end the conflict. It just plants the seeds for the next one. 20 years later, a German corporal who survived the trenches, a man named Adolf Hitler, will use Germany's humiliation as fuel for an even deadlier war. The map of Europe is redrawn completely. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, the empire Franz Ferdinand died representing, is shattered into pieces. Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. Nations that didn't exist in 1914 suddenly appear. The Ottoman Empire collapses, leaving a power vacuum in the Middle East that still causes conflict today. The Russian Empire falls to communist revolution. Tsar Nicholas II, the man who mobilized his armies to protect Serbia, is executed along with his entire family in 1918. The old order, the world of emperors and kings and empires that had dominated Europe for centuries, is gone. And it all traces back to 2 bullets on a street corner in Sarajevo. So what do we make of Gavrilo Princip? In Serbia and Yugoslavia, for decades he was celebrated as a freedom fighter, a national hero who struck a blow against imperial oppression. Statues were erected. Streets were named after him. In Austria and the West, he was remembered as a terrorist, a fanatic whose violence unleashed unimaginable suffering. Both views are too simple. Princip wasn't a monster. He was a 19-year-old dying of tuberculosis, who believed he was fighting for his people's freedom. His target was a political figure, not random civilians. But his actions had consequences he never imagined and could never have predicted. Here's the truth that makes this story so haunting: Gavrilo Princip didn't cause World War I. The war was caused by imperial rivalries, by arms races, by a tangled web of alliances, by militarism and nationalism that had been building for decades. Europe in 1914 was a powder keg waiting for a spark. Princip provided that spark. But if it hadn't been him, it would have been something else. Another crisis. Another assassination. Another miscalculation. The system was designed to turn small conflicts into big ones. And in the summer of 1914, that's exactly what it did. The terrifying lesson isn't about one teenager with a gun. It's about how fragile peace really is, how quickly civilization can collapse when leaders choose pride over compromise, when nations prepare for war instead of working for peace. The Great War was supposed to be the war to end all wars. Instead, it was just the beginning. World War II would kill even more people. The Cold War would bring humanity to the brink of nuclear annihilation. Wars in Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East, Yugoslavia, the violence that began in 1914 echoes through the entire 20th century and into our own time. Today, you can visit Sarajevo. You can walk across the Latin Bridge where Franz Ferdinand's car made that fatal wrong turn. There's a museum. A plaque marking the spot where Princip stood. Tourists take selfies there. It's strange to stand in a place where the modern world was born, where 2 pistol shots killed 17 million people and destroyed 4 empires. The story of Gavrilo Princip and Franz Ferdinand isn't really about them. It's about us. It's a reminder that history isn't inevitable, it's made of choices. Small moments that cascade into massive consequences. Wrong turns that change everything. It's a reminder that the systems we build, our alliances, our rivalries, our preparations for war, can trap us into conflicts nobody wants. And maybe, if we remember what happened that summer in 1914, we can recognize those patterns before they trap us again. Because on June 28, 1914, a 19-year-old with tuberculosis thought he was striking a blow for freedom. Instead, he pulled the trigger on the deadliest century in human history. 2 bullets. 17 million dead. And a world that would never be the same. The teenager who accidentally triggered World War I died alone in a prison cell, his body ravaged by disease, his dream of Slavic liberation drowned in blood. But the question his story raises will haunt us forever. If one person, in one moment, in one place, can change the course of history so dramatically, what does that mean for all of us? And what will we do with that terrible, awesome responsibility?